Welcome to this demo session day 2 of QA live training. I see a lot of new faces, new members who joined. Okay, so are you able to see and hear well? Okay, thank you. So I also have Karthik. Karthik, good evening.
Good morning, Mahesh. How are you all?
We are fine, Karthik. Okay, do you want to speak for a while or shall I continue?
No, no, go on, please.
Okay.
I think I can actually, in fact. So team, whoever is attending these demo sessions, please do note that the whole purpose, and I listened to the most of the conversation and Q&A from the day one session, and there were a lot of questions that will I get a job through manual testing only? And like Mahesh said, not necessarily just with manual testing, but this is a base to start from. This is a primary base for a lot of beginners. Not everyone is right now technically equipped to go and learn automation. They want to start with that, what I showed yesterday, stream A, start with the basic concepts and then continue from there. So who's someone who's new to IT or new to software testing, then this becomes a very essential ground for you all to work with. So Mahesh, all yours, go on please. Thank you.
Thank you, Karthik. Okay. So yesterday we were discussing about the basics of manual testing and what goes and what's the process. So today we'll be emphasizing more on the purpose of the test management tools and the process. Okay, sorry for that. Now this one image depicts the purpose or the need of documentation. So I just don't want to go into details, but this one single image depicts the need of documentation and process in manual in QA. Okay. Now, whatever if you see many of the projects are onshore offshore driven, or it has a lot of members, the various roles are involved in it. Now, any typical project has a customer, a BA, business analyst, uh, the testing team, the development team. A development team again has a database development team, the front-end development team, the web services, the integration team, and there is an environment team and maintenance team as well. When you take a law, when you see there are a lot different teams involved in a single project. Now the it is human tendency or human nature that one understands a sentence in a different way, the others understand it in a different way. Now the same problem happens even in case of the requirement aspect. Okay. Now when you say about it, the the understanding of the requirement might be different, might be different. It might not be different always. At times it can be same. Now, if you say if any conflict arises because of this, then the blame game starts, right? So the conflict management is most important. So in order to reduce that, or in order to what do you say, cut down that conflict that will come in the future because of this, it's better to have documented all this in some form. Okay, and also a process defined for these activities. Now, as I said, as we discussed earlier, testing life cycle or a software's life cycle has both development life cycle as well as testing life cycle. I cut short all the others like the environment management or the deployment. So that life cycle I'm not involved here. Okay, we'll just discuss about the development life cycle and testing life cycle. And when you see there will be common what you say areas where both will be catering. One is the requirement gathering and analysis. Okay, and then the developers will start preparing their unit test cases and develop the code, whereas testers will define the test scenarios and develop their test cases. Now there should be an alignment about the way the developers are developing their unit test cases and the testers are developing their test cases. So what is the base for this? The understanding about the requirement, right? Everyone agrees to this point? Now once the requirements are clear, then only the developers can develop the code accordingly and parallelly testers can write their test cases accordingly. Now these activities are to be shared. It should be shared among both the teams, right? So now how do they share of the unit test cases and test cases should happen. Okay, so generally they will share in simple Excel, using simple Excel, right? That's a simple way of doing, right? But now if there is any change, how do we track the changes? Okay, or how do we maintain the log both in terms of the changes that are done or in terms of any additions or deletions that is done, right? This process is not that simple in terms of in while using the Excel sheet, right? Now the alternate way is you need to have a tool which caters this change management. Okay, now the second point, say suppose tomorrow once the product is out, there's a change in requirement. Okay, now this requirement needs to be provided to both dev and QA. Okay, now how do you say that the requirement that is already developed, if there is any change, which areas of the code has to be changed, what are the areas that need to be modified or deleted, and thus the testing scope. So how do you do that? What is the way of getting this done? How do you analyze that this piece of code has to be changed or this piece of code has to be retested? So that sort of analysis, if it is a next release or if it is done in near future, it's okay because the person who might have tested or the person who might have developed will be there to get this done. But if it is not done sometime soon, but at later point, then there is no way that the new resource or the new tester will be having an idea about it, right? So that's where the need of documenting or keeping the code safe is required, right? Now, there is another case. Say suppose I have a defect. Okay, let's do in the defect. There's a defect which was fixed and released to production. Okay, now at sometime later point, the same defect was found, but in a different environment. What happens now? There should be a lot of there's an effort required to analyze the defect and get it done, right? Okay, Farida, there's some problem with your audio. Everyone else are able to hear. Can you check please again? Okay. Now, so in a different environment, we found the defect. Okay. Okay. What is UT and test? Okay. UT is unit test case and TC is test case. Okay. Wait. Let me. I thought. Okay. Now, and in a different environment, we found the defect. Now, what happens? There's an effort by both the developers and testers required to analyze, right? Now, if you can know that this particular requirement, there was this defect already found, wouldn't it be easy for both the developers and testers to say, hey, this was already found and this is the fix we already got and it was retested, right? So somewhere if you can have uh, this defect being logged or documented will always help, okay, so that tomorrow an extra effort is not required for getting it retested and developed or fixed. Okay, now this is a simple way of telling. So in all these three cases, what did we understand? It is always better to document and log maintenance is necessary, right? So that's where the test management tools come into picture. Okay, now these test management tools help in maintaining the requirements and the change log. Okay, two, the test cases will be placed so that in a multi environment or in a multi working environment, any of the member having the access can read them and can provide feedback as well as use them for testing. This also helps in resource management or the contingency planning, right? So, sir, tomorrow a person who worked on this requirement left the organization. So, what happens? The knowledge that he or she has gained on this particular application will go along with him. The KT, the knowledge transfer, this will not work because the experience always matters than the theoretical knowledge, right? Now, if you have all these documented and kept somewhere where a new person can come and look into it and understand the uh, system, it's you are saving some time, right? Always. So that's one advantage of these tools. The fourth one is the defect management. This is one crucial area in any of the testing process where people or obviously developers will say any of the defect that is opened is invalid, right? Now it is not that easy to convince them, and once we convince, the timelines required to get them fixed and tested, the escalation process is all defined in this defect management. Now, these testing tools or the test management tools will help you in an effective way of managing the defect lifecycle. Okay, so that's the advantage of having this. Now, the last but not least is the closure activities. Closure activities which include reporting and analysis. Now, say suppose if you want to see which are the problem areas or which requirement has been tested or which requirement has not been tested, the traditional way of using Excel or Word document will not help. Okay. Now, a simple way of telling is the requirement traceability matrix, which let us know that whether this requirement has been tested or not, or whether the other way of telling is if you have written the test cases and if you would have executed those test cases, that means the requirement has been tested, right? So how do you know that? You will have to see whether the test cases are written for the particular requirement. Now people might ask, how do you say if you have a big requirement, how do you break it? So now let's take a simple example. Let's say we have a Gmail application, which everyone has a fair idea about. Now Gmail application has login page, then it has landing page, inbox, drafts, and then you have multiple folders in it. Now sent item. So let's say these are the 5 simple requirements which make Gmail as a complete requirement. Now each requirement, okay, each requirement will be given some ID. Okay, so for this Gmail will become R, which is a master requirement. Now login page will become the sub requirements R1, R2, so on. Okay. Now when we write the test cases, we will mark under each test case saying that, hey, if I have to write test case for login, I will mark that the requirement that is tagged to is R1. So when I write test case, say suppose I have test case 1, this is marked to R1. Test case 2 to R1. Test case 3 to R2. Test case 4 to R3. Okay. Now if you see this, how many requirements are covered? Only R1, R2 and R3, right? We have not covered R4 and R5, right? So what is it telling? That these requirements are not covered and hence we will have to cover them. Now the other way of looking into it is the time management, right? So the efforts required to test a particular requirement can be quantified using the number of test cases written for it. Okay. Now there are multiple techniques in it. How do you quantify? By the complexity and severity. Okay. So if you have all these facilities at one shot, isn't it very easy for us to do the analysis and get the what do you say, the efforts estimated, right? So that's where the test management tools play a crucial role. Okay. Now in market, there are multiple test management tools that we have. One is Jira, HPALM, Application Lifecycle Management, which was erstwhile called as HPQC. Okay, and then we got Bugzilla, Oracle Oats, Team Foundation Server, TFS, and there are many other tools. Okay, but if you classify them, there are few are freewares and few are, and others are to be licensed. They are license prone. Okay. Now, if you see, there are many applications now on cloud. So many of you might have heard the concept of cloud. So what does it do? The cloudware, the cloud helps us to access the application or the tool or the product from anywhere around the globe. You need not to do the installation, or you need not to have the product installed on your machine. Okay, just like you access the Gmail or any of your email applications from any browser or from any place, the same way your application or product can also be accessed from anywhere around the globe. So even these test management tools, they are available on cloud. Okay. Earlier, ALM was not on cloud. Now this also have moved to cloud. All right. So that's one advantage of having these test management tools as well. So if you are traveling, you want to see the test cases, or if you have the leverage of executing them, sitting at any place of the globe, you can execute your test cases, right? Or you can see the reports. So that's one more advantage of these test management tools. All right. So as part of this training, we will emphasize more on Jira. Okay. This training covers Jira, and we will try to give a glimpse about Bugzilla and HPLM. As I said in last class, we have as I said earlier in the last class, though though all these tools are looking different, or the feel is different, the look and feel is different. Ultimately, what they are doing is they are working on the test lifecycle activities, right? So for us, if we understand the tool, okay, understand the flow of the tool, it would be very easy, okay. But as I said again, let's not worry about the tool. Let's understand more about the testing lifecycle, and that way it is easy for us to uh, uh, have a walkthrough about the tool. All right. So this is it about today's session on test management tools. If you have any questions, please shoot out them. I'll be happy to answer. Okay. Okay. The first question Mallishwari, she's asking, test management tools are only for defects or test cases. Uh, Primarily, they are for defect management and test cases. One second, please. Sorry. So these tools are primarily for defect management and test cases. But if you see from a different perspective, they can be used for reporting from the management perspective. They can be used for effort estimation, again from management perspective as well as the testers. It can be used to maintain the change log as I discussed earlier, right? So 75 to 80% of the project needs are covered using this, except the test execution. Rest all documenting and change management and reporting needs are covered by these test management tools. Okay. What is severity? Okay. Severity, if you have to define, okay, we have, I'll let you know by an example. We have a login page, okay, which will say for Gmail itself. So we have Gmail login page with valid login. We will enter into the inbox. Now, if the password is not working, which means even though I'm giving the valid password, it is not making me to enter into the application. Okay, this is one scenario. I have forgot password link, which is not working. Now, in these two cases, how do you define which one is a critical bug, this one or the second one? First one or the second one? First one, right? So which means this one has an impact on the entire product need, and that's how we define the concept called as severity, right? So which defect is having more severity, and of these two, which one is more priority? Which one has to be fixed now? The first one has to be fixed. The severity defines the impact of the defect on the application, right? Yeah, right. So both are severe, but from the impact perspective, the first one is more severe than the second. And now the priority of these two would be the first one itself. So priority means if at a point I have only one resource and I have to get it fixed, which one I have to fix? The first or second? The first, obviously, because it is having high severity, right? So these points will come when you open a defect or when you write a test case, which test case has to be executed first because of the severity and priority. Okay. So we need to understand what is severity and what is priority. And based on that, whenever we write a test case, we will have to define what is the severity of this test case, what should be the priority of this test case. And if I open a defect, what should be the severity of it and what should be the priority of it. All right. Okay. Okay, what is Oracle Oats? Oats is another test management tool from Oracle. Okay, it's a test suite, Oracle application test suite, which will work same as HPALM. Okay, or any other test management tool. So that's one from Oracle. Okay, there's product. Chandrasekhar is asking, what is the difference between test case and a test scenario? Okay, test case. See, test case and test scenario. Well, let me. Now, if you take a simple example of Gmail itself, login page itself. Okay, in a login page, I'll say I have username and password. Let me do this. Requirement is login page which has username and password. Okay. Now, if I have a password and then I have the login button, this is simple requirement. Now, if I have to test this, how will I test? One with valid username and invalid password. Second, valid username and invalid password. Third, invalid username and invalid password. Fourth, invalid username and invalid password. Now these are I'm telling this is how I'll be testing this. Okay, and apart from this, what I'll test, whether username I'm giving maximum length and minimum length. Same goes with password. Okay, so what am I doing? I'm just mentioning the possible ways of testing this particular requirement. So these are my test scenarios. Whereas in test case, I'll be giving the descriptive way of testing that particular requirement. So I'll give a valid username and then an invalid password, the values to it, and what is the error message that is expected. Okay, this is more of descriptive, and I'm also testing the username text box, whether it's a text box or not. What is the dimension? I mean, what is the space it is taking? It's a dynamic field or a static field. Okay, and where is it located? On what? If it is a mobile application, how is it shown? If it is a web application or in the browser, how it works in Chrome, how it works in IE, all these will become my test cases. So for simple one scenario, you are breaking it into multiple test cases. Okay, so that's the primary difference between the test scenario and test case. Yeah, thank you for connecting it. Thanks, Janlin. Okay. Okay, Suki is having a question. Is Jira playing as a traceability matrix? Yes, Jira also has reporting what do you say section where it will help us know where it will help us giving the traceability matrix. But it is a little bit complex than your when it comes to HPALM or OATS. Okay, I will showcase the complexity, how it is not that easy in Jira to get the traceability matrix. Okay, once we have a detailed session, then I'll show you. So Indu is having a question. So we link user stories for requirements and test cases. Yeah, that's the point. See, in Jira, right? You don't have a separate section to write your individual test cases. You have a requirement which we call it as user stories. Okay, the requirement R1, R2, R3, so on we have discussed, right? Of these user stories will have test cases, but they come as an attachment. Okay, there's a what do you say, a high complex way of writing test cases in Jira. It would not be that easy to let you know at this moment. It will be a confusing point. But let's park this question, and when we have the Jira discussion, I will show you what exactly is the difficulty. But just for your information, unlike any other test management tool in Jira, you might not write individual test cases. Okay, for the requirement, you will have the test cases attached either in form of Excel sheet or Word document. Okay, but whereas in ALM or OATS, you can export the Excel and you can see the test cases in the UI. Okay, whereas here they come as an attachment. All right. The same goes with defect. Again, is a different thing. From the defect perspective, you open it as a new defect, so you can tag it to the tag the defects to the user story. So that way it is easy to get the traceability of defect traceability. It is easy to get the defect traceability. So how many defects are open for this requirement, or which defect is having high severity defects. So that sort of ease is there in Jira from defects perspective. But from test case perspective, it is not that easy. Okay. Okay. The core question again. So what is the traceability matrix? Okay. Traceability matrix is something which will let you know how many which requirements are covered and how many test cases are required returned for each of the test case. Okay, as I gave the example in the earlier, that's what traceability matrix is about. It's a report which will let you know whether the requirements are covered, or how many test cases have been written, or how many defects are open for a given requirement. Okay. There's a question from Sandeep. Will you be dealing with mobile or web app for manual classes? See, this live training is more of concepts, whereas we have a live project where it will discuss about a web application as well as a mobile application. Okay, so the practical front you can look in the live project. Okay, there's a question from Marsha. Can you show how does it looks different than HP Quality Central? Yes, as part of the training, right? We'll showcase the tool, and you can easily understand the difference. As I said, primary emphasis will be on Jira, but I'll also show HPALM just for your understanding, but not in detail. If you would like to have a detailed session, then altogether it's a different training. All right. Okay. Is live project part of the QA training? It's part of JPAT. Okay. After this live training, it follows with the live project. Once the live training is done, you can use, then we'll start the live project as well. Okay. In ALM, requirement coverage and requirement traceability are two different things, isn't it? No, I mean, both are the same. It's just the name change, that's it. Yes, there's no difference. Okay. Okay. Okay, there's a question again from Asha. Asha, how do we get into live project after live training? Okay. So this after live training is done, it's again a different what do you say training that we have for live project. So it will start after the completion of live training. So you'll have to register again for live project. How do we get into live project? I mean, I didn't get the question exactly. You'll have to register for that. The payments part and the fees, it is a different context. If you can reach the sales team, they'll be happy to answer your questions. But yes, we have a separate fees apart from the live training for live project. Okay. Balkrishnan, see, you are saying that, okay, the point is requirement traceability and requirement coverage go hand in hand. Okay. Simple way of telling is requirement traceability matrix will show whether the requirements are covered completely or not. Okay. Whereas requirement coverage will also showcase whether the test case have been covered or not from testing perspective, whereas from code development perspective, whether the code has been developed or not. So if you see they are one and the same, only the difference is it will show whether a requirement traceability matrix will show the completeness. Okay, all right. Any other questions, team? All right. I don't see any other questions. This is it for today. Thanks everyone for joining today's session. See you in the next session. Bye bye.